What is it you're trying to achieve with the book?
The first thing to say, of course, is that Trump is not Hitler. Hitler was a committed racist, a convinced anti-Semite. He unleashed the Second World War on the world, and he was responsible for the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews died. Trump was not even remotely like that. I don't even think that Trump was and is a committed racist, although he did and does, in my view, deliberately play to white nationalist sentiment. But there are important parallels between the two men, and it is these parallels that I want to look at.
How does that work?
So both of them are, above all, political performance artists, populist political performance artists. So their modus operandi is populist self-staging and populist rhetorical strategies.
Can you give an example for that?
So the idea behind populist self-staging is that you present yourself at the same time as like all of us and unlike any of us. Hitler, on the one hand, tried to present himself. He did this himself, and of course this was also what he wanted newspapers and photography and film and so on to do. He presented himself as the great Führer, as the great military leader, the great architect, the great statesman, and so on. So someone who was very unlike us. But at the same time, he presented this picture of himself as basically an ordinary bloke. So, for example, he would dress down to the point of shabbiness. He only ever had one medal, the Iron Cross, which is the only award you could get regardless of rank. If you look at someone like Hermann Göring, then you see a whole row of medals. Many dictators in the past, and probably still today, have that as well. Hitler very deliberately wanted to be close to the people. Now, Trump applied a very similar strategy, I think. For Trump, it was harder to present himself as an ordinary bloke because he was a rich, he was a millionaire. But he did try and present this populist image, for example, by flaunting his predilection for junk food.
What about their rhetorical strategies?
Yeah, I look at a range of rhetorical strategies. So I go from jokes and insults to extremism and exaggeration. I also look at a whole other range of things that are important to their way of speaking, such as establishment bashing and conspiracy theories. But I think the most important thing that I look at is this difficult question of how is it possible that on the one hand you've got these really extreme statements that are completely over the top, and yet so many people seem to embrace these statements. How is that possible? And I think a lot of it is to do that actually many of the people in Germany in the 1920s and 30s, and also today in the case of Trump, they take their leaders seriously, but not literally. So let's take Trump's promise that he would build a wall, a big, beautiful wall between Mexico and the United States in order to keep all these Mexican immigrants out. Now, I think that a lot of people, when they were listening to that, Trump supporters, they didn't hear a concrete policy proposal. What they heard was, above all, a promise to restore, to reclaim America's presumed white Anglo-Saxon identity. And we see the same thing when it comes to Trump. We see the same thing when it comes to Hitler. When he was speaking about the Jews and was making really excessive statements, a lot of people saw that Hitler is pointing us in the right direction, which is what we need to do, is reduce Jewish influence. They weren't thinking that Hitler was serious about doing away with the Jews, perhaps even exterminating them. So this is what is sometimes called narrative truth. It's a kind of inspirational truth. And in the book, I explore how that works.
So the comparison works in two directions. Analyzing Hitler helps you understand Trump better, and analyzing the Führer enables you to understand the American better.
Yes, that's right. So in the case of Trump, it's not just that he uses what has come to be called the authoritarian playbook. Trump is much more than that. He is, as I said a moment ago, he is a political performance artist, very much in the mold of Hitler, and to a much greater degree even than, for example, Mussolini. In the case of Hitler, we tend to see Hitler as a murderous, a genocidal dictator, which of course he was, but less so as a populist, which he also was. And I think looking at Hitler through the lens of Trump also helps us understand this particular fatal attraction of Hitler better.
Many thanks for the interview.
Thank you.